Peace, everybody. This is Open Mike Eagle, and this is another episode of What Had Happened Was with our esteemed every week guest. We're getting to the point where we got to call you a captive at this point since we got you locked in like this. Mr. Dante Ross, what's cracking today?
Chillin', man. How are you?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. I'm excited for this conversation because we're going to talk about a group that includes definitely my personal favorite rapper of all time. Like, made the music that has been most impactful on me. A very, very important artist to me personally, and of course to the world. But the group is KMD.
Yes. And the rapper would be MF Doom, of course.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
you know, it's funny because some people don't know he was in KMD. They're not cognizant of it. That's
Right.
which is bugged out to me. The other thing is he is the one artist that I get asked about the most, and he didn't sell the most records. I mean, he sold less records than not most, but than several other cats. But I get asked about him by people more than anyone else. And the ultimate hip hop nerd questions are always about Black Bastards. So
So we're gonna dig into that too, because we're gonna try to cover both of the KMD albums
yeah.
in this sitting. We're gonna try to do that. Just to kick it off, okay, because they come out in '91, and you had a lot of records. I feel like came out around that
I
time. A lot
did.
of groups.
Brand Nubian, Leaders of the New School, then Poobah. So I was in the middle of a lot of shit, and Third Base was kind of popping before that, and Third Base kind of led to KMD, obviously. So yeah, there was a lot of shit going on, and I came out with I felt like I had a real strong label identity between Brand Nubian and KMD and Leaders of the New School. There was a synergy between those three groups, and though none of them sold a ton of records, they all made, they all were in the black, so I got to keep rolling the dice with them. And Brand Nubian was the most successful, but KMD was really interesting, and I had a deep personal relationship with them, which I tend to have with a lot of my groups at that time. But it was a little deeper with those guys. They were younger and maybe more cerebral, and they recorded in my studio, mine and my partner's studio, the SD50 studio. They recorded there a lot. They basically did all their demos there. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So you asked the questions.
Well, is it difficult to try to break that many groups at one time? I mean, it's a lot of debut albums from groups that you signed.
I mean, it is, because my staff was, look, like, I'm not going to mince words. The staff was semi-lame. Seemed like I had a new head of promotion every year, every 6 months. And they, there was a real thing, culture clash going on in the music business then. Rap, hip hop and R&B, and there's a lot of guys that worked at Elektra. They didn't want to know about KMD or Brand Nubian. They wanted to know about Howard Hewitt and whatever the fuck was going on with that bullshit. It was definitely, it was tense. And the fact that I was like a white kid who came to work with the skateboard and like size 40 jeans, like I wasn't really necessarily on face value respected or ingratiated by those cats. So, it was definitely, there was a culture clash, man. And I wish, I wish I had had a better staff, but it was also an experience in learning how to deal with the corporate world. So there was pluses and minuses to it.
How'd you end up coming across KMD? Was it through the Third
Through
Base
Third
collab?
Base, yeah. And I would say that initially, Search, I think, probably was the person who put them in front of me. And they were from Lakeview, Long Island. He's from Rockaway, and that's somehow how he knew them. I'm not sure how he caught wind of them, but I think that he initially was the connection, and him and Pete put them in front of me. But I remember Search was the big proponent initially, and look, Search was a good rapper, and a very good A&R guy. So I looked at it with seriousness, and they came to me with a hit record, right? They had Gas Face under their belt. So, and he had a stellar verse on that song.
A special appearance by KMD's Zev Love X. A gas face can either be a smile or a smirk when appears a monkey reach to work one's clockwork. Perking is built to the rim of my cup. Don't tempt me, you're empty. So fill her up is a.
So I heard their demos and they were pretty cool. And we started, I signed them in 90. We started making the record, came out in 91. the record, they made a lot of it in my studio. See, back then it's like, you couldn't really do demos that you converted to your albums per se, right?
You had to do it and do it once and then do it again completely.
And that's exactly what happened. They did the record twice. So
I
they
see.
did the record in my studio for the most part. Then they went to Chungking and redid the record again. And I always felt a little something might have been lost in the process. I didn't
That can
love
happen,
the way,
right?
Yeah, and I didn't love the way the record sounded. And if I had known a little more back then, I probably would have had someone else mix it. I never I love John Gamble, but no disrespect, I never loved his mixes. I always thought he had a little problem with the high end. It didn't crack.
Gotcha.
They weren't as bright as other people's records. And I would always argue with him about it. He didn't like things to be super bright. He was more mid-rangey. And that record suffers from that a little bit sonically. That said, it's a brilliant record. The way that they wove the skits together was what, and created dialogue out of skits. And what they're talking about was unique. And I felt like, there's obviously a De La Soul influence, but there's also kind of a Public Enemy influence. But it was also very subversive.
Let's enter this jewelry shop.
Come on, Mr. Pickle, man, hook it up. 14K death bracelet. You can't beat it.
No, I cannot do that. This is not a pawn shop. This is Pickle's Jewelry. Ah, Mr. Hood, my favorite customer. What can I do for you today?
I would like to see some gold rings.
Ah, yes, we have these dirty fat gold rings, perfect for your masculine hands.
Some earrings from my
How
wife.
about these elephant-studded diamond earrings, perfect for the woman of your
I
dreams?
thought that record was very subversive, and that was kind of the beauty of it, because they seemed kind of innocent, but they were really talking about some serious shit.
They did have that dichotomy, right? Like they seemed like kind of fun-loving young guys,
playful
but then
young
they had
kids,
this militant,
but yeah, but they're also like dropping a lot of gems. They're talking a lot of stuff about what's going on in the world, and I thought that was the beauty of them. They questioned a lot of stuff, but they could question it in an innocuous kind of way, very subversive, and that's what always made me think of Public Enemy. Not that sonically it sounds like Public Enemy, but Chuck D had once told me that Flavor Flav was like the court jester, and people who didn't want to listen to Public Enemy would listen to Flavor Flav's court jester antics. So he opened the door with humor and playfulness for Chuck to hit him in the head with the message. And I felt that another side of that kind of equation, a different version of it, was KMD on some level.
That makes sense. Before we get too deep into the album, I do want to ask you a couple things about Gasface. Because Gasface is a super dope classic song. When you look at its place in hip-hop history, though, there was a lot of beef that came out of that song, too.
There was.
Particularly with Hammer and other people that got dissed on the song.
What do we think about Hammer?
Was KMD or Zev Love X at the time caught up in any of the beef that came out of that?
Nah, he never had beef with nobody. To my knowledge, he was, that's not his thing, and he's not gonna, that's just, he wouldn't really deal with that. Nah, I never seen any of that come to him. He got along with everyone. Like he was a funny guy. Like he was very, very sarcastic. He's super, and you can tell in his music, like the later music, that sarcasm comes to the forefront, that tongue-in-cheek kind of thing he does. But he was always that person. He was a very funny individual. I mean, look, when he died, like I had a multitude of people call me and go,
real.
"Is he really dead?" Because you never know what's real with that guy, right? The charade is always the antics, and particularly as he becomes MF Doom.
On Gasface, Zev gives you the gas face. and Search of all people tells people to stop dissing you on records.
Yo, stop dissing Dante on records, y'all.
So what did you think of that?
Yeah, I didn't really appreciate it like at the time. I thought it was annoying, and more annoying than that was all the people who I knew who busted my balls about it. But I was a supreme ball buster, as was Search and Doom, so we're all busting each other's balls. It was just a personal, like an inside joke that went outside. And I wasn't necessarily appreciative of it, to be honest. It was kind of a pain in the neck, and it's hard to get taken seriously when your friends are making fun of you on records. So I thought it did my career a disservice, and in all honesty, a couple of people in that time period got punched in the mouth for taking liberties.
Right, because this is
with
kind of
things of that
doubling down
nature.
on the Dante the Scrub thing off of Daylight and coming into this.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a bad temper, and it's okay if you're my man. You can say anything about me other than my mom's, but you know, if I don't know you, don't get too familiar. And it definitely, a few people got slapped around over talking out of place back in those days. So I didn't necessarily appreciate it. But you know what? It was like a big record, and on some level, I guess it helped me become more notable, semi-famous, as opposed to most A&R people at that time.
So as they get to start working on the record in your spot,
Yeah.
what was it like being in the studio with them? Like who did production? How was that all coming together?
So that's a really good question, because you know, like, it's really hard to talk about Doom without talking about Sub, and Onyx was in the band too. And Onyx is a really nice guy. He's their boy.
Now Onyx was just rapping though, right?
Just rapping.
Okay.
So Doom would start a lot of the beats. Like he's not very patient. So if you hear even his later stuff, it all feels a little unfinished.
Right. Raw.
So the person who and the person who kind of was the finisher was Sub. Sub was more technically adept. And Gamble had a hand in it as well. And you know, that was kind of the process. But Sub really technically hemmed up a lot of stuff and came forward with a couple of beats as well, with a bunch of beats, in fact. And they worked in tandem, but Subroc was more the producer, which people don't really know. And I remember when Subroc bought, I got a 3000. He bought my MPC 60 from me, and I showed him how to use it in my house. I had a little studio too, and I remember him picking it up like it was like second nature. So, you know, he was really the finisher, and very involved in the production. I say more so than Doom.
I see. So you mentioned earlier, you know, one of the real innovative things about this album is how they built the skits. But what do you remember about how they tied the skits together?
I mean, it was uncanny how they had all of the records working with each other, right? How they had figured it all out. And they literally had it all mapped out before they did it.
Really?
Like, there wasn't a lot of second guessing and doing it in the studio. They showed up with their records and would just make shit. And what's even crazier is Doom, I had like a bunch of crates in the studio, maybe like 20 crates. And I would let people go through my records, my friends, and Doom went through a lot of my records, and he knew what records of mine he was going to use when and where. It was wild. And he really him and Sub had a lot of it mapped out. And they would argue about how they were going to approach it, like in a like pretty loving way. But they had, you know, sibling rivalry. They bickered a lot in a very sarcastic manner. And they busted each other's balls a lot. And that's one of the things I remember about those sessions, particularly, is that there was a lot of fucking cracking wise at each other. And Doom is a great artist, and he would draw pictures of Subroc. So Subroc became Subroach, the angry cockroach. And he had the big cockroach that was Subroc drawings that he would put up on the wall, because we had all these drawings we pin up on a wall like a mood board, and a door with lots of stickers and drawings, because my man Gibi, rest in peace, was a great artist, and he would draw this funny shit. But Sub would get it, because fucking Doom would like always do Subroach drawings. And they had a lot of nicknames for each other. And Sub was always like, kind of like, oh man, like he was like, like this guy again, like, you know what I mean? He didn't really start it where Doom started. He had a lot of nicknames. Subroach, Subroll. One time they threw a roll at him. I remember Doom had a roll he bought. He was like, yo, this is your new name, Subroll. So he was like, Subroll, Subroach, Subroc, Subrosa one day.
Wow.
It just went on and on. There was a lot of jokes. And Subroc caught a lot of heat. He had thick skin. And, you know, with Doom, you can never really win with Doom. Like, he was around me and Pete and Search and Gibi and Gamble to a lesser extent. We could all snap. So there was a lot of snapping going on. And I remember that as a strong component in making the record. It was one thing that was crazy is that we were locked out of our studio for like 8 to 12 weeks. I didn't really get to work a lot because Gamble was focused on their thing. And I always thought it was a little weird that happened. And Gamble, I think, experimented a bit with them. He kind of like did some on-the-job training with KMD, which in retrospect I probably wouldn't have approached it that way nowadays. I probably would have done it differently. I probably would have had them go in a studio and make the whole record that way, just somewhere not as expensive as Chungking where they mixed.
Right.
And that was it. I mean, what's funny is even I remember Hum Rush. So Hum Rush was a record. I had those drums in something else, and I had them hooked up a different way. And I walked into Chungking, and Subroc was using my drums. And I had them chopped up, like I slowed them down and chopped them up that way. And I was like, what the hell? And he was like, oh, you wasn't going to use them right anyway.
Whoa.
And I was like, yo, crazy? He was like fucking with me. And I remember I was pissed at Gamble because he gave him my drums. I was like, why would you not ask me? Oh, I didn't know. I was like, yo, you sat there while I chopped those up for like an hour.
Damn.
You know, like, and so that's why I got co-production credit on, because I was mad. And I remember, and I told the story somewhere else, I was pissed off, and Doom was like, yo, let's go to the store. We should go to this deli, the Italian Food Center. And he bought me my sandwich that day and told me that was my advance for using my drums. And I told him if that was my advance, I wanted to get 2 Manhattan Special sodas. So he bought me two coffee sodas, and that was that. And I was like, oh, thanks. I ate my advance. So I never got paid for it, nor did I want to get paid for it. But, you know, it was pretty funny how that happened.
Hum along if you can't sing along, hum along. Hum along if you can't sing along, you hum along. Hum along if you can't sing along, hum along. Yeah, hum along with Zev Love X.
And look, that record was fun to make. There was zero bad vibes with KMD, man. It was always really enjoyable. And Onyx was in the studio a lot. And he was pretty funny, and their whole crew, they had the Get Yours posse, GYP was around, and you know, those guys were great, man. Jay Boogie and everybody, Diego, and Pete Nice was around. Search was not around a lot during the making of the record. Pete was around a lot more, and Bobbito started to work with Pete at some point. I want to say it was after the first record, but you know, Curious was around, CM was around. My best friend Paul lived with Curious uptown, and that was the Nerve Center. This was like my best friend from high school. And Paul Moore, who's now a lawyer, he was George's roommate, so I was up there a lot. They lived on 97th, and Bob lives right there too. Bobbito lives in the building next to George's on the same block, and that was like headquarters. We were up there a lot, and there was like there was a lot of energy and synergy within our crews. You know, it was like we were very connected. You know, it was a lot of fun, man. It was great. It was a great moment in time.
I want to quickly, before we move on from Hum Rush, that song really caught my ear because, first of all, it's a slow beat. And you didn't hear a lot of that at that time.
Sounds chopped and screwed.
Yeah.
Sounds chopped and screwed.
That was so different for the time, right? To have something that down tempo. And it's also really interesting because that, to me, from this album, is the beat that sounds the most like Doom's later stuff.
It is. It sounds very broken. And I had it, I think, like, it was like 86 or 88. He slowed it down more. I remember that. And this is pre-time compression, so you can really hear it dragging. And he used the Sesame Street sample, right? You know, it's Bert and Ernie, hum along, sing along. And I think, but I could be wrong, I think it was my Sesame Street record, but it could have been his. We had a bunch of them, and so did he, and I had a bunch of comic book records, and as did he. And he had free reign on my records. I'm not sure if it was mine. We might have the same record. It's not that unique a record. And I just thought it was genius. You know how he had Bert and Ernie singing along, and it was cool, man. It may be Big Bird, not Bert and Ernie, but I think it's just really cool how he put that together. It does sound like the later stuff. You know, they had some gems on there. That Hassle sample. There's a bunch of really cool shit they used, and of course, you know, there's Plumskins, and then there's the God Squad, right? Which is, you know, Give a Dog a Donut. Yeah, with Brand Nubians and.
Born again, that's old Ben blends KMD and Brand Nubian friends. X tends to grip palming, cousin Carmen, his knowledge of self succumbs to bombing.
And what I thought was cool was that Pooh didn't show up for the session, but Buster did, and Buster got on the remix, right? The Cat Stevens one. So when you listen to the God Squad, there's no Pooh in the remix. Buster filled the slot.
There it is.
And Bust was always a fan of KMD and of Doom. He really, it was funny because Charlie Brown hated KMD and he would always accuse me of favoritism, and on some levels I was guilty of such because Charlie Brown drove me crazy and Doom was my man. So I did probably exhibit some favoritism towards Doom and Sub.
Well, what kind of stuff were you doing for KMD that Charlie wanted you to do for Leaders?
Man, who knows, man? Charlie Brown has problems. He's got, he could argue with the brick wall. So I don't know. He just always accused me of going the extra mile for them, and in fact, I probably did. They were the underdogs, and he tried to sun them a lot. And Doom, wasn't necessarily, I don't think they appreciated it. But on the other hand, Bus was really cool with all of them, and he jumped on the God Squad record and Nitty Gritty, and he killed it. It's so good and so smart the way he used to Cat Stevens on the remix, and I just thought it was great. So I was a big fan of that record and that song. It was we had some success. We didn't have overwhelming success, but it was successful enough that we did exercise the option to make a second record.
Before we move on from Mr. Hood, let's talk about Peach Fuzz.
Okay.
Peach Fuzz is a single that I actually really remember very vividly from my childhood.
The video is really cool with Pooh playing vibes.
Yeah, I was really, really into it. And I don't think I heard the album at that time, but it really got me interested in KMD because, again, these sound like playful, young dudes, you know what I mean? So it kind of resonates with me as a young person.
Yeah, yeah.
And it sounds very different from the album. Like, it's very, mellow and chill.
Yeah, it's more jazzy and somber, relaxed, the vibe sample. It was great.
By the hills of my chinny chin chin, got many plus plenty. String by string, I think I count like 20. If you loan me an ear, I'm returning with interest. If not, I'll simply twist your wrist. So listen.
I thought it was cool. Another thing is Grand Poobah was a fan, and that's why he's in the video. He liked them a lot, I don't know, man. It was a cool song. It was probably the best first single. I think Ralph McDaniel did the video. It got a lot of play on VH1. It was like I said, man. We didn't sell a ton of records, but the energy around them and with them was always great, man. And Doom did the artwork. He created the logo. He put together the front cover. Very self-contained and very self-aware. He was his own creative director, so to speak. And we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of promo stuff that Pete had made and got out to people. And it was a learning process for all of us, but a positive learning process. And they want to tour with De La and Leaders and Tribe, I think, maybe Brand Nubian. They toured a bunch, and overall it was a good experience. It was fun. We spent a lot of time in the basement. We spent a lot of time in Chungking. I spent a lot of time hanging out with them outside of work, and it was cool, man. Those guys were great. One of my favorite groups to ever work with ever, and I really missed that moment of time, and I really makes me miss Subroc, who was just such a unique individual. He was brilliant, innocent, talented, funny, trippy, and completely unique. He was also extremely cute. You want to give him a hug. He was just a cool little kid. He was just great, man. He was a really nice person with really good energy, and also very sarcastic. Oh, the other thing is I'll add this.
Yeah, for sure.
With their own record collection, which was steeped with gems, they rarely had a record cover. They would bring a bag of records that were just in the most chaotic shape of all time, and filthy, dirty sounding, and they just didn't value the records at all.
Huh.
They were where I'm my shit's in a bag, and my shit's pristine. They did not give a fuck.
So some of the sounds, it makes sense for their shit to sound raw because the quality of their records by the time they're sampling them are probably pretty crazy.
Crazy.
That makes sense.
Filthy.
Now, as we get to, the period after the release of the first record is when we get into the period of time that people generally consider to be the origin story of MF Doom is kind of in this period.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the major events being Subroc's passing,
Yeah.
the album being shelved, I guess. I'm not sure, is that the right word for it?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I mean, I can kind of tell you it chronologically.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, if we could put the timeline in order for us.
I'm really versed in it because Doom passed, and I wrote this thing for Jonah Hill about it recently, so I got it together. So we make the first record, and it's not a huge success. Third Base break up, or they're breaking up, and Search detaches. We have a call. Well, first I get, Business Affairs says it's going to cost X amount of money to pick up the option on this, and it's too expensive, and they're signed through a production company, which is not necessarily super artist friendly. We can make another record, but we don't want to pay the mini max on the second record. So I approached this with Search and Pete, and Pete is agreeable to working something out, and Search isn't necessarily, and he detaches. There's lots of tension between Pete and Search and me at that point in time, and so they kind of detach from. He detaches from the record. At the same time, Karis One is making the Heal record. There is a verse by MC Search on the Heal record on a song that is removed from the album, or the verse is removed from the album because KMD takes offense to it. The gods take offense to it, and it becomes a thing, and it furthers tensions between them. So Search is now detached. He was never seen again while we made the whole record. And I state this all because I'll be really frank about this. He's gonna do a season-long podcast on Doom, and I want to be clear, he had absolutely no involvement in Black Bastards whatsoever.
I see.
And was not seen at all. And before he goes and tells another one of his infamous fables, like writing for Rakim, I want to state what happened. So that is the plain, simple facts of it. So we proceed to make the record after we renegotiate the deal, and Pete is with me riding shotgun. He's manager, half A&R guy. They start making the record. We're not going to make it with Gamble. We're going to make it with a guy named Rich Keller, who did a lot of Beatnut stuff. He did the Pete Nice solo record. So Rich is a really good engineer. He has a studio in Jersey City. They first start to make the record, Subroc and him. They go upstate to Malachi York's retreat that has a studio.
Wow.
Because I don't know if you know that Dr. York was also he's an R&B singer.
I had no idea about that. That's wild.
Yeah, he made R&B records, and they were part of the Ansar Allah community, devotees of Ansar Allah sect of Islam, and they followed Dr. York. And so they went to upstate to Dr. York's studio and his retreat, and they worked for a while, and they came back with the initial basis of what would become Black Bastards. They come back, and they're gonna start working with Rich. I believe they started working with Rich. And, there was a lot of psychedelics getting done at that time. Things get trippy. Subroc one day decides he found a time machine amongst other wild things and decided to give away a lot of money he had, and he couldn't get it back. And he was fine with it because he had found the key to time travel, amongst other things. It was kind of it was bugged out. They were hanging out with CM a lot up at 97th Street all the time. Cage entered the picture because Cage is the rapper Cage, who is Pete's artist, and him and Sub become really good friends. And Subroc, after a night, I think, of taking acid, but I could be wrong, just chilling, I'm not really sure of the exact specifics, leaves Cage's house in Washington Heights and troops back to Long Island. When he gets back to Long Island, he goes across the Long Island Expressway after taking the LIRR home, and he's hit by a car under mysterious circumstances and killed. 19 years old, maybe 20 years old. And he's killed, and we never find out who killed him, and there's a lot of mystery around what happened, some accusations that it was purposeful. No one really knows. I don't really know the minutia around it specifically, but I do know it was a tragic loss, and we're all crushed. Collectively, we had a large group of us who all hung out together, Curious, Bobito, Pete Nice, Gamble, me, the SD50s, all the CM guys, Lord Sear, K-Nit, who passed away, rest in peace, my man Paul, a lot of us, we're all very hurt by what happened, and it's tragic when, a young person who has so much to live for is killed. And, it threw everything upside down, man. Everything was, everything gets put on hold for a minute. I remember that they didn't really have enough money to pay for their service. Doom was a new father, and we put, I passed the hat at work, and me and Pete paid the difference, and we took care of the service. And I only say that because it'll show you that you don't get rich in a rap game.
Right.
And also because my publicist at Elektra, my two publicists, Doom, they love Doom a lot, and Sub, Beth Jacobson and Shelby Mead helped get the money up to make this happen. So there's a memorial for him in Long Island, and I'm going to say this again because I want to be clear about some things. And there's not a dry eye in the house. And Search showed up and under duress was asked to leave by some people. And Subroc, which I thought was fucked up because I felt like Search was there to pay his respects,
right,
regardless of where you are with each other at that point in time. And this is why I remember it so much. I believe that he should be allowed to pay his respects. Things happen, right? I don't think he ever was malicious, or I should say vindictive, towards KMD. I think he was exploitive, but I don't want to say vindictive or, I don't deem Pete as being exploitive. So, and I say that just to clarify shit, because he's going to go run his story, and I deal with actual facts, and that's that. So, I remember during the service, and Brian Coleman in Check the Technique really told the story well in his book. Doom put a boombox next to the casket and played KMD's music and played some of Black Bastards. And it was very emotional, man. And after the service, there was another altercation involving Search, who kind of tried to pay his respects, and there were some threats levied at him, and he was made to leave, and that closed the door on any involvement he had in Black Bastards whatsoever. So obviously Doom needs to take a time out. He just lost his brother.
Right.
But he doesn't take a very lengthy time out. And he proceeds to make the rest of the record in Jersey City with Rich Keller at his studio. And Doom was, I don't want to say homeless, but doing a lot of couch surfing, staying with George, stayed with me, stayed with Stretch, stayed with Rich. I don't think he wanted to be in Long Island. So he wasn't, and he was a bit of a vagabond. But never once did he ever talk to me about his brother's death. He was a bit stoic about it.
You're just pushing through.
Right, and finishing the record, and I believe it was a cathartic exercise for him. I wish he was here to talk about it. And the one thing I'll say is that behaviorally, he started to drink more, and his sarcastic nature leveled up. He was more sarcastic than ever, and I believe probably a defense mechanism for all the internal things he was dealing with. But he forged on, and he made the record, and he was fucking with Grimm and them a lot, my man Jay Black, rest in peace, and a bunch of cats from Uptown who are George's people. It was a heavy moment, and they delivered the record right before the holiday. I'd heard the record in pieces. I can't tell you I was in the studio a lot. I was at Chungking with them. I think I went to Rich Keller's studio one time, and I kind of felt like it was important to give Doom space, and I trusted Doom anyway. He knows what he's doing, and he would come and play me mixes. but I wasn't in the studio hands-on a lot. I had a lot of other stuff going on, including the Grand Poobah record that I was very involved in, hands-on and in the studio with. So my time was thin, but you know, Pete was around and I trusted Rich, and I got the mixes, and I communicated with Doom a lot. He would come and play me mixes, as would Pete, and they delivered the album before the holiday, and the sum of its parts was impressive. I thought a better record than the first one.
A quick question, just a quick question for you, because this album is a lot more like mature than the first one. It's a lot darker, right? So was that darkness present in the first version that they went and did, or did that darkness come out more as Doom was working on it alone?
They didn't do a whole first album, so that they did songs,
right,
and it was definitely more street.
Got you, okay.
Right, so, and rap music was more street. It had changed. So they weren't, and they were older, right? And they had children, and, you know, things happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and they were running around with Grimm and Uptown a lot, and they were around a more, you know, more street element at that time. And they were all, you know, they're young black men. So, you know, they're, regardless how playful that first album is, they're still young black men in America. So they're not suckers. They're not soft. You know, they're just conscious. So, you know, life had changed and the music changed to reflect that. So it was going where it was going, but I will say that Sub's passing had Doom explore some darker themes, you know, and I felt like musically it reflected that, the passing of his brother, you know. I mean, that's, you know, you have to understand the relationship was symbiotic between them. It was yin yang, you know, like, you know, they were damn near telepathic, right? So they spoke their own coded language, and they could speak without communicating, and it was, you know, they had as close a bond as I've seen with brothers ever, and more like twins than brothers, definitely in yin yang, and you know, his part of him was gone, right? And he said that to me one time later on. He was like, when I was like, man, you know, I miss Sub, and he was like, Sub's still here, right here, you know, because I think he felt that Sub was still with him, and in a lot of ways he was, spiritually, and he, you know, they delivered the record. Sub did a lot of the production on it, which people don't know. He did a lot of it and made a lot of it initially at George's house. He had the MP up there, and he produced a lot of the beats and finished a lot of them, was very involved in the production of it. And now Doom had to do what Sub usually did. It was his turn to finish it.
Right.
And he did, and they gave me the record, him and Pete, and I listened to it over, I got a couple days before vacation, the holiday break. I thought it was great. I really, really liked it. I thought it was a special record. I thought that they had leveled up.
Absolutely.
And I felt like it was in keeping with the times. It had a competitive chance. I thought it would be bigger than the first record. They had grown in stature a bit. And I know people who had the record. John Schechter, I gave him a copy, I believe, and I think Stretch had it. I know Bob had it, Pete had it, and the consensus was that it was a much better record. And I remember John Schechter, from The Source particularly, loving it. He was a champion of KMD, and I have to give him a shout out for always being a champion of KMD before it was a cool thing to do. He delivered the artwork, I believe, post the holiday. We got the finished artwork. I had scheduled a mastering session. Delivered the artwork as always. He did all the artwork, and you know, he was playing on the game Hangman.
Right.
You know, so it was a cryptic message to the world, black bastards, and he was killing Sambo, meaning Sambo was gone, and I believe he was probably going to move on to a different logo, but I can't tell you because it never happened. And you know, he was killing the myth of Sambo, putting it to rest. Right? And I think when you look at the artwork, it's a powerful statement.
Right.
As was most things Doom did. He's a very special person. And he had a lot to say. And he was saying it in his own cryptic language. But, you know, man, that shit was powerful, man. And, you know, black bastards. It's like make you shake your head, make you laugh. Can't believe that motherfucker did that. That's wild. But it was great. And it was approved by my art department. There was no pushback. Advances went out. I believe we shot a video, and I can never really remember if we did it in, but for what a end knows, and which is a controversial title. Advances were sent out, and Havelock Nelson and Terry Rossi. Havelock wrote the rap column, the first rap column for Billboard, and Terry Rossi wrote for the Monday Morning Monitor, which was a radio recap. She had written the R&B column. They were reporters for Billboard, and I believe Havelock came first, but Terry Rossi came first, I think. And she had more juice. But Havelock, who was a friend of mine, I thought, threw it to the wolves and said that we were irresponsible, the label, meaning we were irresponsible in putting the record out.
He printed this?
And he printed it, and
In
he
Billboard?
can pull it up. Yeah, I can even send you a link to it. He printed it and said he couldn't believe how irresponsible the powers that be at Elektra Records were for ordaining the cover art and a record called Black Bastards, the single called What an End Knows. In doing so, he, I believe, called from my head, in a sense. You know, because if anyone's irresponsible when it comes to the rap music at Elektra Records, it's Dante Ross.
Right.
And I thought it was foul. And he could have picked up the phone and talked to me or talked to Doom or Pete. He knew all of us. And he didn't even try to do that.
Do you feel like
ask Doom.
he was misinterpreting the theme?
Of course he was.
Okay.
Of course he was. He never had, I've talked to Havelock about it, and to his credit, he owns it. Like, and I got to give him respect for that, because, you know, we had some discourse a couple of years ago, and I said, yo, man, you know, I'm just going to tell you, you threw, you know, my man to the wolves, and you never, and this is before Doom passed, and I said, you never gave him a chance to defend his art. You never had any dialogue, any discourse with him to find out his point of view. You just convicted him without knowledge of what was going on. It was conviction without investigation, and I don't respect it. It's bullshit journalism. And he copped to it, you know, but you know, point taken, it came out and feathers were ruffled. Ice-T's debacle had been 1 year earlier.
So this was, okay.
So, and he was part of Warner Music Group. That was on
That's
Siren.
the same basic label family as Elektra.
Right, exactly. We're all we at that time. Now it's Warner Music Group. It was we at Warner Electric Atlantic. And feathers were ruffled, man. And Terry Rossi and Havelock, and I didn't know Terry Rossi, and she's an R&B person. She also was critical about the record, and she caused a big sting. And she was connected to a lot of big dogs in the music industry. I think a lot of black urban heads of departments at various labels knew her well. And within Warner, within WEA rather, there was a lot of concern and contentious feelings about the artwork.
And her problem was also with the artwork, or her problem was with the album itself?
The artwork.
Okay.
It stemmed from the artwork. I don't think, you know, I'll be honest, I don't think she ever listened to the album.
See, that's the part that really sucks.
Yeah, and I don't know if Havelock did either. Look, if you had listened to the album, you would probably understand the rhetoric and the discourse he's talking about. Hard not to. On top of it, the insensitivity. My man had just lost his brother 6 months
Right.
prior. Maybe you want to talk to the brother. And look, man, it's awkward for me to say some of this stuff, but as a white man, but I felt like they did a young black man a great disservice. And I felt it's very irresponsible as black men and women, elders, to have treated him as such. And the offense that occurred has never been forgiven by me. It has always bothered me, and it will probably bother me to the day I die, because I believe that my job as an AR person is to defend my artist's artwork. Art, period. Artwork, messaging, point of view. And so, you know, that's what I do and did. And they didn't do the proper investigation. They didn't do the proper research to find out what was really going on. So, you know, my boss called me, Bob Krasnow, who died, rest in peace. He's been vilified a little bit in this, but he doesn't deserve to be. He told me straight up that there was a lot of concern over the record and that the group was going to have to change their artwork, that they couldn't issue the artwork as was. And I delivered this news that there was a lot of concern about it, and we were supposedly going to be granted an audience with the people in power at WMG, including the highest ranking black people within the WIA organization. And it was to include, I was told, Sylvia Rohn, Dick Parsons, Merlin Bob, Vincent Davis, who had a label deal through Elektra, and a couple other people. I was told that Vincent Davis found the artwork offensive, as did Sylvia Rohn. This has never been confirmed. I can't tell you for sure if this is fact. And no knock on either of those people. I have nothing but respect for them. But so we were going to have a tete-a-tete with these people. And, you know, Sire Records had the year earlier came out the gate saying we will not bow to censorship. Howie Klein sent an infamous letter around that went to everyone in the company. And it said, you know, we are not bowing to censorship. The PBA will not censor our art. And they turned around and they bowed down. And the PBA and Dan Quayle, who was the vice president at the time, basically destroyed Ice-T's relationship at Sire Records, and Body Count's record never came out, or it came out and got taken off shelves. So we were the fallout of that. I think my boss envisioned as being part two. So we were going to have this big meeting, and it was at like 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning, and that was an ungodly time for me or Doom to be awake and alert. But we showed up, and we got called to Krasnow's office. He told me the meeting was canceled. He called me in first. Whoa. He said the meeting is canceled, and we're not going to put the record out. We're gonna give the kid back his record. I said, he was in my office here for the meeting. And he said, well, to his credit, he said, well, there was a little more to it. I was like, you know, this is fucking bullshit. And he goes, Dante, it is bullshit, and bullshit rolls downhill. And today it's rolling your way. I'll never forget he told me that. And then later on, he told me some other things, but I'll get to that later. So I want to grab Doom, and Doom knew something was up by the look on my face, and we went in the office, and he told us, we're not going to be able to put the record out. And the meeting's canceled. We're not going to be able to put the record out, and we're going to give you back your masters. In addition, we'll give you a fee for leaving the label of $25,000. It's either 20 or 25. So Doom handled it like a champ. It was brief. I will give Krasnow credit. He looked him in the eye and told him it. And Bob Krasnow was like a legendary music figure. He signed Keith Sweat. Not Keith Sweat, Anita Baker, Parliament Funkadelic, Richard Pryor. You know, he worked for James Brown. He was a heavy guy who loved black music. He was a maverick, and I would find out later that he was on the ropes at Elektra. He couldn't fight the battle. He had signed Dokken for an ungodly amount of money and Huey Lewis and the News, and they both tanked, as well as a box set by Metallica. And they had never loved him anyway, and they were trying to get rid of him. And he would later tell me that, I just can't fight this fight right now, I'm on the ropes. And he would be relieved of his job less than a year later and replaced by Sylvia Rohn. So, you know, we went back to my office after this happened, and I was fucking pissed. And I got a bad temper, and I was fucking pissed. Doom surprisingly wasn't pissed. And I remember him saying to me, so I had this case of wine someone gave me for my, for the holidays or something, and it was sitting there, sweet premium wine. I had 2 cases of it, and he would always come in and drink my sweet premium wine. I didn't drink wine much. And that was as good a day to start drinking wine as ever. And we started drinking. And he told me he didn't hold me responsible, and that he said I should get dropped more often. I got my record back in, $25,000. And he laughed.
Drop more often.
And I was like, Jesus Christ. In retrospect, I realized it was a small thing to losing your brother, losing your record deal.
Right, the scale of that.
And I always say that Doom died 3 times. The third time being the finite one. His death was in 3 acts. A part of him died when Subroc died. I think a part of him died when KMD lost their record deal. And then the third and final act is when he physically passed. So, you know, I thought about that a lot when he passed. And look, man, Doom is, he is, and once again, I have to tread lightly on some of what I say. As a white man, it's not necessarily my place to speak on certain things, but I feel that I can speak on this. Doom to me is a manifestation of a young black man in America. He took all the shit in the world sent his way, his brother dying, losing his record deal, and re-emerged from that pain and injustice to create an alter ego based on this pain and suffering, MF Doom, and become a much bigger and more important artist than he may have been if he was KMD. And I think that black people traditionally take the shit handed to them and create beautiful art. That is the blues. And to me, Doom's life is, it's kind of the blues.
Right. Man.
I got to take a sec.
Yeah, for sure.
I gotta just chill for a minute.
No problem.
It's hard to talk about.
That's totally understand.
Yeah, I'm good.
So part of what's fascinating about this story is how quickly this escalated from being just about an album cover to not only is the album not coming out, which nobody has a problem with the music, and they're being released from the deal. Like, why do you think that escalated so quickly? It doesn't even sound like anybody was like, it doesn't sound like Doom had the opportunity to be like, okay, well, I'll just change the cover. It's like before he knew it, everything was gone.
I think people were scared. I think they were scared that Cop Killer Part 2 was coming. I think, though it's never been confirmed, I believe that Krasnow probably buckled. He told me initially, like, I'm defending this, like I defend you and your vision. He never listened to the record, but he's like, I'm defending you because I know you believe in this. And I believe that he didn't feel empowered enough to defend me, and he made the decision probably at the behest of a higher up in the WIA organization, Bob Mercado or Gerard Levin or Dick Parsons, put the clamps on him, and he wasn't going to fight the fight. So before anyone was given the opportunity to fight the fight, he nipped it in the bud because he was going to lose the fight. That's what I believe happened. But I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know exactly what happened, the intricacies of it. I was never let in behind the closed doors of what occurred. I will tell you that I contemplated quitting my job. In a later meeting with him, we got into it, and I told him he should have never signed that piece of shit Huey, that no talent bum Huey Lewis. I was like, well, I mean, you signed that fucking bum Huey Lewis, and he was like, he didn't really appreciate that. I thought I might get fired. I didn't. I thought that I contemplated quitting. I didn't. John Schechter interviewed me for The Source, where he wrote an editorial piece about it. I spoke my mind. I was warned by people not to. I did anyway. My boss, Bob Krasnow, did not fire me. I think he knew that I was probably right, and he also knew he couldn't do shit about it. And look, this is one of the times I learned about the music business. Shit ain't fair. It's called a business, right? So
how close did this album get to coming out? Like, did it have a release date and all of that?
It had a release date. Had a release date. Had everything. Release date, artwork. I believe that there's promos with no cover. So the promo tape went out without the artwork. Pete Nice has the approved artwork. He sent me a scan of it not that long ago for my book. And it's out there, you know? It was out there. People had the record. It was, you know, like a lot of people have that tape. That tape is not that rare. So, you know, it was on the schedule. It was coming. It would have been out in, I don't know, 6 weeks after the single, 4 weeks after. It was in production. It wasn't in production, but it was everything short of going into full production.
So it's around this time did Zev kind of disappear? Zev Love X is kind of
He
off the scene.
disappears. He was living in Midtown. He lived in Hell's Kitchen on 9th Avenue. Yeah, man, I didn't see him a whole lot. I know he stayed with Stretch for a while. He was working on shit up there. Stretch had a little studio. I didn't see him a whole lot for the next few years. When I did see him, though, it was all love. There was never any contentious feelings whatsoever. I believe that he knew that I did everything within my power to defend him, and I did. And like the other thing is, I didn't quit my job, and I don't think Doom held it against me. And that was that. He would surface here and there, but I didn't see him a whole lot. I remember going to his house on 9th Avenue at one point. For some reason, I can't even remember what it was. Maybe to get him some weed or some shit, I don't even remember. But I didn't see him a whole lot, and then he relocates to Atlanta. I did reconnect with him in the late 90s when he starts putting his records out. I think I saw him at the New Eurekan once, and he was around in the orbit of Bobito and those guys. But I didn't see him a whole lot. But when I did, it was all love, and he always asked me about Gamble and Geeby. He loved John Gamble. That was his man. So he'd always ask, how's Gams? That's probably the first thing he asked me. That was that. Like, and we reconnected, I think, when he kind of became, when he started dropping more records. I'd see him more and speak to him on the phone more. He probably wanted to communicate with everyone more when he had his shit back together, and he got his shit together. And he was like, now I'm MF Doom, fucking watch me now,
Do you remember the first time you ever heard of MF Doom?
I do. Well, because he was MF, there was MF Grimm first. Right. So that was their little crew. And so, I think he was always called Doom. His last name's Doomale. And I think prior to him putting out records as MF Doom, I was aware that he was going to be MF Doom. But I can't say for sure. And obviously when Gas Straws and Dead Bank came out, I was aware that was Doom.
Doom, super metal finger villain, chillin'. About to get the millions, chillin'. Yo, I heard the chicken try to cut us. Like the sun is. She said, Mike. It go like, I hold mics, like niggas hold their girls tight, but I ain't at the hub, probably your accurate pearl white.
And those records were huge Fat Beats records, right?
Right.
The other thing is when we made Curious's album, which is a little later, we have a song that Curious did that's dedicated to Subroc on it, Leave You With This. And it starts with him calling himself the Cucaracha. It's a Subroc rhyme, and he says the Cucaracha with soul, and that's how it starts. So, and I remember Doom liking that song and ordaining it. But when he started showing the New Eurekan with like a scarf around his face and the primitive versions of the mask.
I used to couple lot, but never caught those drops. Whole life like ponytail tight, marvelous. Stop, stick around, come through, niggas down. Stop around, single cycle, don't stick around. It's not a whole three flat. Kevin Destroy rap. Took a plot of the word strap. With them stack cats and kidnap. Never leave the statement to the blunt, let the rest know.
That's probably when he re-entered my consciousness, and we would have lapses of talking and communicating and seeing each other, but like whenever we spoke or communicated, it was always celebratory. And he loved to send me things, like when he made his Wallabies, he sent me his Wallabies.
That's tight.
He sent me the Dunks. He knew I liked certain things. We all like, the Brand Nubians included, X and Pooh Bah and me, and a lot of us have a similar aesthetic of what we like, whether it's Wallabies or whatever, fucking weed or whatever. We just have this similar thing, this area that we bond over, and sarcasm is in the center of all of it.
Did y'all ever end up working together again on anything?
Man, we talked about it so much and we never fucking did, and I didn't put him on my Stimulated compilation, and I bumped into him and he was mad at me for it. He was like, Unc, what happened? So that was a miscue on my part. And he was also sometimes hard to find. He'd in and out. You never knew where he was.
Right.
And I remember him being mad at me, but we always, several times I tried to get a Dell and Doom project together. They always talked about doing it. They were good friends. And Dell was actually at the service, him and Domino. We never got it together. I sent him folders of breaks periodically throughout the years. I turned him onto some records, and I sent him a large folder of breaks for the proposed Doom Dell record. Dell was in on it. Doom was supposedly in on it. I almost tried to do it at ADA. They were full of shit. They didn't want to do it. But I talked to Devin, who wanted to do it, and we just never did it. He was in St. Lucia or in Grenada living. We were talking on Skype a bunch, and his son passed. His son Malachi passed. And prior to him passing, Doom was trying to convince me to go visit him down here. He's like, "You need to come down, Unc." And I think if I had gone there, maybe we would have actually got the project started, and I didn't go. I'm such an asshole. It's one of my biggest regrets that I did not go to visit him. I think it was 2017, 2016, we were talking about it. And that's when the conversations really ratcheted up about trying to do the record. We didn't get it done. And it wasn't meant to be. And I'll just leave it at that. It's a big regret of mine to not have done it. But man, even if I gone there, who knows what would have happened. I might not have gotten it done, and might have just bugged out for a week and fucking told jokes. Who the hell knows? I know I really regret not going to see him. And I also love the fact that Sadiq from Rhymesayers really held him down and took care of him. And
100%.
Devin and Ben, they really looked out for his legacy. And man, Doom comes from the Grand Poobah school of gaming the game. And I got... and Sadiq helped him straighten out his game in the gameness, and I have to give big props to him for that.
Big shouts to
and
Sadiq.
Devin Horowitz, But man, Doom is a complicated individual, one of the smartest, most insightful, sarcastic, funny, witty, creative, and truly unique and special people, man. It's hard to talk about it, man.
Absolutely.
And I kind of talked to Bobito about it the other day. And I think this is going to be the last time I talk about it.
That's real.
I want to leave it alone. It's in my book, and I just kind of want to leave it alone. I don't want to ever exploit his memory or overplay my importance in the myth of MF Doom and the fable. I was there in the beginning. I remained a friend, and I just think he was so special. He holds a special place to me and to all of our friends. And I don't think anyone ever told him that. And if we did, he would have told us to go fuck ourselves, made a joke out of it. He would have ridiculed us.
Right.
But he was really a special guy. And I think we all know how special he was amongst each other. And hence, all of the love that we all showed him in his passing. A lot of people knew he died. Not a lot, but several people knew he died in October. I did not know that. But I found it so fitting that the man behind the mask dies on Halloween. I can't think of anything more fitting. And, there's been talk about trying to do something in his honor around Halloween, a Doom Fest. I don't think it happens this year, but one day I hope it will happen. And, he left an indelible mark on the culture, on music, and on my existence. And, 1 year, my two SD50 partners died. And
That's a heavy year. Respect for all of your losses. That's an incredible amount of people to lose that's close to you.
I have this picture, and it's Sub, Doom, Geeby, and Gamble.
My goodness.
I took it, and they all died. And I sent it to Doom when Gamble passed on October 16th. And Sadiq hit me back, which is weird because Doom always hits me back. See, I'm going to make sure Doom gets this, which I found weird. 14 days later, Doom was dead. So now it makes some sense. It's crazy, man. It's a wild year. And I was thinking that if I hadn't taken the picture, was in the picture, I might be dead too. Who the fuck knows? But man, that picture encompasses a chapter in my life, and all 4 of those guys are gone. And, I love them all.
Yeah, that's so rough and such a big, incredible amount of loss to go through in 1 year. So, man, just respect for that, and I'm glad to be able to give some space to shine light and show love to all of them after a year like that. As we wrap up, I want to give you a chance, to speak on him and his work in a little bit of a less personal way. I'm curious, just in the Doom era with all of his alter egos and different projects, was there anything he dropped in that Doom era that you feel like resonates with you the most?
Mad Villain.
Yeah.
I mean, Mad Villain is so fucking amazing.
Living off borrowed time, the clock tick faster. That'll be the hour they knock the slick blaster.
And to me, one of the greatest examples of postmodern, postmodern sampling, sampledelic music, because we can't sample like we used to. It's one of the greatest examples of post-Golden Age sample-driven music. It is a testament to him and Madlib's genius and their creative genius together. There's legend that a second one was out there in the works. It never got done for whatever reasons. I think people who weren't the artists got in the middle of things and it never worked out. Mm-hmm. Shame we didn't get that. I love that record. I love Danger Doom.
Yeah.
Of course, I love the first, the first one, Doomsday and MF Food. They're all amazing in their own separate ways. Operation Doomsday is ridiculously amazing. To hear him come back like that was just a big fuck you to the world. But to me, it culminates at the pinnacle with Mad Villain.
Word.
Mad Villain's just so fucking powerful. He's rapping his fucking ass off.
He really is killing it. He's freed from the responsibilities of having to do production, and he's got such high level beats, and he's just going for it on every song, just going for it.
I feel like Madlib he showed out.
Yeah,
I was like,
did.
Madlib showed out.
He did.
He's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna really show out right now, and that's when Madlib really entered my consciousness as being that dude, and that record is, it's fucking incredible. I mean, accordion, just all that shit, man. That shit is. It's funny, too, because I listened to it a lot after he died, after not listening to it for a long time. And whoa, it's fucking, and he is rapping his ass off.
Well, that's all we wanted to touch on today. I mean, we're privileged and fortunate to get to hear from you on so many pivotal points in the story of this person who was important to all of us. And it's so rare we get to actually hear from somebody who was there at some of those most critical moments, and because there are a lot of stories out there. There's a lot of hearsay. There's a lot of mythology to the man and the story behind the man. Yeah. So it's really dope to be able to hear from you. The facts.
I just wanted to keep it as honest and factual as possible. I didn't really want to lend myself to hyperbole. Sometimes we're all guilty of revisionist history, truth and subjective truth, and I just want to try and make sure that I'm as truthful as I could be. I'm not super important in the MF Doom part of the story, other than I help him, be put forth to the world. But he was someone I admired watching him do his hustle. He got handed all the bad shit in the world, and he fucking overcame it all. And the metaphor for Dr. Doom, if you're in the comic books, rising from the dead is like super crazy. And I was really curious to see, I heard there was going to be a third iteration, Sadiq had told me. I really wish I could have seen it. But man, the last few years I had some good Skype sessions with him, and I had to tell him to take the mask off. I was like, he Skyped me with the mask on. I was like, take that dumb shit off. I was like, this is me, man. He was cracking up. You know, we had a lot of jokes. He's like, yo, you're an old Jew now. And I was like, yeah. I was like, yo, your stomach's up in your chest. What happened? Like, and it just went on from there. So
all that, all that like, sweet premium wine, man.
Yeah, man. No, the jokes. You know, when it's like when you connect with your old peoples, with your men's, it's like the jokes start off right where they left off. You know, and I got to thank Devin for reconnecting us, and Sadiq and those guys. When you know, ever I needed to reconnect, we reconnected. And honestly, I probably had spoke to Doom the last 5-6 years of his life more than I had a whole bunch prior. You know, there was a gap in there at some point. And it was cool, you know, to know that he was doing good and that he was still MF Doom. I felt terrible when his son died and communication slowed down for a minute, but I really wish I could have got the record done with him, the Del Doom thing, and this wasn't meant to be, you know. That said, like, look, the whole, he's your rapper's favorite rapper.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your favorite rapper's favorite rapper.
100%.
You know, and I think that's a great way for him to be remembered.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to leave at a place where, you know, y'all are laughing and smiling and cracking jokes on each other. I think that's a wonderful way to commemorate him. There's a lot of dark in the story and a lot of light in the story, so I'm glad we were able to end in a smile.
He was triumphant in the end, you know, to me. Like, I feel the triumph in his life and his life force, so we have to celebrate that.
Absolutely.
You know, and he also was like, look, right now, everyone lives in this independent space musically. Rap music has embraced this form of independence. Well, Doom's one of the people who pioneered that.
Absolutely.
I always say him and Kool Keith came from major labels and they reinvented themselves via the independent Fat Beats lane and owned themselves. And like, you know, that to me is a role model for a lot of shit motherfuckers are doing now.
That's the path I walk for sure, business-wise. You know,
I mean, you know, Run the Jewels on down, right? Like, you know, a lot of people, even like, you know, more regional, southern-driven music as well, always had an independent bent. But for things that are more cerebral and encompass some more intellect, you know, he's one of the role models for independent music. Him, Company Flow, Kool Keith, they really showed people that you ain't gotta buy into the bullshit to be who you want to be and be successful.
It's like the rap version of what indie rock was. They were able to have
It's
that
exactly,
space for
it's exactly
so
what it
many
is.
years.
It's 100% what it is.
But he opened it up.
Yeah, right. You have a career, right? You don't need to worry about a hit record,
Right.
what your spins are like, what radio's doing with you. You know, you can tour and this, that, and the other. I mean, a shame in Doom's career is that he didn't really tour the way he could have.
Right.
Like if he had gotten a little band together or something, I mean, it could have really been a big thing. But you know, Doom did it how we want to do it. It's wonderful how we did it.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna end off right here. We'll pick up next time. I believe we'll be talking about I think Pete and CL is probably a good place to go next.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Word.
So, it's not emotional.
Thanks for watching that, and if you dug that, leave a thumbs up and say what up in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to Stony Island Audio for more.